I knew something was wrong the moment my son leaned in and whispered, "Do not tell the neighbors, you are my mother." His tone was clipped, his lips barely moving, as if speaking the word mother might stain the air. I forced a polite smile at the man across the street, watering his lawn in pressed golf shorts, and raised my hand in a small wave, like a stranger just passing through. "My name is Evelyn Parker. I am 63 years old, a retired pediatric nurse from Spokane, Washington. It had taken me 2 flights and a long, bumpy taxi ride to reach Fresno, California, where my son Michael had built a new life I had yet to see. I carried a modest suitcase and a tin of cinnamon rolls, the recipe he begged for every year on his birthday as a child. My knees ached from travel, but I did not complain. I never had, not when I worked double shifts at the children's clinic, not when I covered his tuition, not when I signed the papers that made this very house possible. Michael avoided my eyes. He did not take the tin from me. He shifted uncomfortably and muttered something about Vanessa not allowing sweets in the house anymore. Vanessa, his wife. The consultant with sharp suits, sharper words, and a presence that could silence a room. She appeared moments later, holding a glass of white wine in one hand and her phone in the other. "Evelyn, welcome," she said with a smile that ended before it reached her eyes. "We were not sure which flight you were on." "I texted yesterday," I reminded her. "Right." She nodded vaguely, already turning back toward the kitchen. The entryway gleamed with expensive tile and artwork I did not recognize. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, sterile and cold. There was no place for a coat, no small hook or chair. Michael gestured toward a narrow closet, crowded with tailored jackets. "Shoes off," he murmured. Vanessa just had the floors polished. So I bent carefully, my joints stiff, and unzipped my walking shoes. I placed them neatly by the door, like a hotel guest mindful of rules. My coat stayed folded in my arms. I did not ask why my presence needed to be concealed, why the truth of me had to shrink to fit their polished world. I followed him quietly, careful not to touch the walls, careful not to disturb the fragile perfection of a life that no longer seemed to have space for me. The living room stretched wide before me, all sharp edges and neutral tones, a space designed for magazine spreads rather than family. Every corner was curated glass vases arranged just so, furniture angled for aesthetic rather than comfort, throw pillows that looked untouched. What I did not see were memories. No photos of Michael as a boy with scraped knees and missing teeth. No framed drawings from his school days. Nothing that whispered of the life we had shared before Vanessa. Instead, the mantel above the fireplace displayed photographs of Vanessa's family. Her parents smiling on a yacht in San Diego, her brother in Manhattan with a skyline view, her children from her first marriage, posed in coordinated outfits on a beach. Even baby Sophie appeared only in a professional sepia-toned portrait. Michael stood nowhere in these images, as though his existence began and ended in Vanessa's world. I clutched the tin of cinnamon rolls, searching for a place to set it down. "Where should I put these?" I asked. "On the counter." Vanessa called from the kitchen, distracted. "We are gluten-free now, but maybe the kids will want some." The kids, Tessa and Jordan, 12 and 9, peeked around the corner long enough to mutter quick hellos before darting upstairs. They had never called me grandma, never spoken to me on the phone. Sophie, my own granddaughter, slept in a sleek white bassinet that resembled a gadget more than a cradle. "Let me show you to the guest room," Michael said. "Not your room. Not welcome home. The guest room." He led me down a pristine hallway lined with more black and white architectural photos. One door bore a frosted plaque etched with the words "Private Office," as though this were a corporate suite. The guest room was sparse. A bed with crisp white sheets, a nightstand with a card that read "Welcome Guest," and a printed Wi-Fi password Parkerstone home. My name, Parker, was there, but spliced and polished into something more acceptable, something less connected to me. I set my suitcase on the stand, provided, the way one does in hotels. My coat lay folded on the chair. Michael lingered by the door, his hands in his pockets. Just try to relax tonight. It is mostly Vanessa's circle. Doctors, architects, that kind of crowd. Of course, I replied, keeping my voice even. But what I meant was simpler. I understand. I am not to speak too much. I am not to say who I really am. I am here to decorate the background, like a prop in a play staged for someone else's applause. The next morning, the house stirred before dawn. Vanessa was already in the kitchen blending something green and frothy. Her movements precise, efficient. Michael stood nearby, scrolling through his phone, barely lifting his eyes when I entered. "Morning," I said softly. "Morning," he replied automatically, still staring at the glowing screen. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the sleek machine on the counter. The coffee tasted bitter and thin, nothing like the dark, slow-dripped brew I had made every morning of his childhood. I sat at the breakfast bar and watched them prepare for the day. "We are heading to the farmer's market," Vanessa said, not glancing at me. "Then soccer for Jordan. After that, Sophie has a sensory class." "That sounds nice," I replied. "Maybe I will take a walk around the neighborhood. Stretch my legs." Michael finally looked up. His expression flickered, uneasy. "I'm sure you are okay with that? It is an upscale area. Just do not talk to anyone too long. All right?" I tilted my head. Why would I? He shifted quickly. "No reason. People here can be particular." I caught the sharp glance Vanessa shot at him, as if he had already said too much. Then they left, the door clicking shut behind them, and silence filled the house like a heavy curtain. I walked through the rooms slowly, cup in hand. The counters gleamed. The furniture sat rigid, every surface polished into sterility. In the hallway, I paused before a grid of framed photos, bridges, cityscapes, angles of steel and glass, stark images. Not one face, not one moment of family. Something tugged me down the hall to the laundry room. The stacked washer and dryer hummed quietly, and beside them stood a tall cabinet. The handle gave easily under my hand. Inside, files and folders sat in neat rows. My breath caught when I saw a beige folder marked closing. I pulled it out and opened it on the counter. There it was, the mortgage papers, the closing summary, the deed, my name, Evelyn Parker, printed clearly at the top as primary owner. Below it, in smaller font, Michael Parker, secondary. And then, my eyes found it. A clause I had nearly forgotten, added years ago by a lawyer friend. No refinancing, transfer, or sale permitted without written consent of the primary deed holder. The words glowed like a lifeline in the sterile light. My knees trembled. For the first time since stepping into this house, I felt the ground tilt back beneath my feet, steady and solid. By evening, the house transformed into a stage. Vanessa moved like a conductor, directing caterers who carried in trays of rosemary chicken, lemon tarts, and wines with labels I had never seen. Candles glowed from polished holders. Music whispered from hidden speakers. The air smelled of citrus and control. I stood in the corner of the living room, wearing the navy dress I had packed, though Vanessa had pressed a pale cardigan into my hands earlier, suggesting it was more suitable. I folded it neatly over my arm, refusing silently. Guests arrived in a parade of pastel sweaters and tasteful jewelry. They kissed Vanessa on the cheek, shook Michael's hand with admiration, and glanced around the house with approving eyes. Compliments poured over the marble countertops, the designer rug, the curated artwork. "And who is this lovely lady?" one woman asked, gesturing toward me. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. This is Evelyn. She is a longtime family friend. She knew Michael back when he was little. Aunt Evelyn. Practically an aunt. The words slid over me like ice water. I smiled, nodded, and offered a polite greeting, letting the lie settle into the room. We sat at the long table, napkins folded into swans, wine glasses sparkling under the chandelier. Conversation swirled about property values, private schools, and vacation homes. I listened, quiet as the silverware against porcelain. It was perfect timing, Vanessa said brightly, gesturing toward the walls. We secured this house just before the market spiked. An excellent investment. Smart move. One of the neighbors agreed. You two have a knack for seizing opportunity. I set my glass down and spoke softly, almost as if to myself. It is always wise to invest at the right moment, especially when you help acquire the property. The room stilled for a heartbeat. Michael coughed sharply into his napkin. Vanessa's hand froze above the tomato salad. A polite laugh fluttered from one guest, uncertain if I had been joking. Conversation shifted quickly after that, back to wine pairings and weekend plans. But the silence between my son and his wife pressed louder than anything else. Later, when the dishes were cleared and the guests' laughter had faded into the night, I returned to the guest room. I sat on the bed, slipped off my shoes, and opened my phone. The photo of the deed glowed on the screen. My name first, his second. Without hesitation, I forwarded to my lawyer's private email. No message. No explanation. Just the subject line. Reference. The following morning, Vanessa bustled about the kitchen with military precision. Containers of snacks were arranged in neat rows, gluten-free pretzels, carrot sticks, dried fruit sealed in tiny bags. Michael folded beach towels into perfect rectangles, his shoulders tight with anticipation. They were preparing for a weekend at a resort outside Fresno. A carefully planned escape. Mom, Michael said cautiously, we will be gone 2 nights. The kids are excited. It is just a little getaway. I set my teacup down. Would you like me to stay here while you are away? I could watch the house. Keep things settled. Vanessa hesitated, eyes flicking to Michael. I could see the silent calculation behind them. Alarm codes. Neighbors' questions. The risk of leaving me in their curated world. Finally, Michael nodded. That would be helpful. Just do not worry about anything complicated. The thermostat can be tricky. He slid a keyring across the counter. Every tag was labeled garage, office, mailbox. Thank you, I said simply, slipping the keys into my purse. The next morning, I stood on the porch as they loaded the car. Vanessa kissed Sophie 3 times, checking the straps twice. Michael gave me a quick hug more, a gesture of duty than affection, and told me to enjoy the quiet. I smiled, waved, and watched the SUV disappear down the street. Inside, silence fell heavy, but not oppressive. It was a silence I owned. I moved slowly through the house, not sneaking, but claiming space that was already mine. In the garage, I found a dusty plastic bin shoved behind boxes, labeled Christmas and Old Tech, in faded marker. It read. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. Inside were fragments of a life Michael had chosen to box away, a photograph of us at his high school graduation, another of him as a boy standing on the beach with a sandwich half eaten in his hand, and a birthday card I had sent 2 years ago still sealed. At the bottom lay a recipe card in my handwriting, stained with flour and thyme. I carried the box into the kitchen and lined its contents across the table like evidence in a trial only I could hear. Then I cooked. Not Vanessa's, kale salads, or catered meals, but real food roast chicken with thyme, biscuits from scratch, coffee strong and dark. For the first time in days, the house smelled alive. and in that warmth, I felt myself return. By noon the next day, the knock at the door was soft, discreet. A woman in a dark blazer introduced herself as Layla from Stafford and Ross, the firm my lawyer worked with. She carried a leather folder and a tablet. Her presence slipped into the house like she belonged, calm and professional. "Mrs. Parker?" she asked. "Yes," I said, standing straighter than I had in years. "We have prepared the reassignment papers. It will only take a few signatures. Electronic is fastest." We sat at the polished dining table. I had cleared Vanessa's, decorative candles, and the unopened architectural digest, leaving space for what mattered. Layla slid the tablet across to me. I signed. Page after page blinked softly as my name appeared. When it was done, she tapped a few buttons. "As of today, reassignment is in progress. You will receive confirmation in 3 business days. Your son will be notified after filing." My chest rose and fell. "Steady. Thank you," I said. Layla gave a polite nod, gathered her folder, and left. The silence returned, heavier this time. Not burden, but gravity. I had just shifted the axis of this house. I moved to the office, intending only to breathe in the reality of what I had done. On the bookshelf, Vanessa's neat files caught my eye. I told myself not to pry, but something in me insisted. One folder bore her name in sharp black ink, Vanessa Stone Trust. I opened it. My pulse quickened as I read. Legal drafts transferring the house into her private trust. Not joint with Michael. Not even with Safi's name. Just hers. A notarization date scheduled for the following week. The walls seemed to close in. Vanessa hadn't just erased me. She had planned to erase Michael too. He was not the architect of this future. He was another pawn in her carefully curated game. I set the folder back exactly as I found it, my fingers trembling. If I had stayed silent, if I had continued to swallow humiliation one more week, the house would have slipped beyond my reach forever. I walked into the garage, opened the box labeled Mom, and lifted out the photo of Michael and me at the coast. The wind had been wild that day, his hair sticking up, my hand firm on his shoulder. He had called it the best day of his life. I found a frame in the closet and set the photo on the hallway console, angled neatly where anyone entering would see it. Then I went to his desk and wrote a note. Calm, deliberate, a reminder. And I placed the deed summary on top of it. Evidence waiting in silence. They returned on a Sunday evening, voices spilling into the hallway before the door even closed. Vanessa's tone was sharp. Urgent, check the cooler. Make sure the milk hasn't leaked while Michael dragged suitcases across the polished floor. I was no longer there, but my presence lingered. The first change they noticed was subtle. The framed photo on the hallway console. Michael stopped mid-step, staring at the image of himself at 10 years old. Wind in his hair, my hand on his shoulder at the Oregon coast. His jaw tightened. Vanessa, he called softly. She appeared with Sophie on her hip. What? He pointed at the photo. That wasn't there before. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Did she put that out? Michael said nothing. He walked toward his office, his pulse quickening, the air suddenly heavy. On his desk lay the note, folded neatly, and beneath it, the deed reassignment summary with the embossed seal. He read in silence. Vanessa's footsteps quickened behind him. What is it? She demanded. Michael lifted the paper slowly, his voice hollow. The house. It's in her name now. Solely. That's impossible. Vanessa snatched the summary, scanning it. Her face flushed crimson. No. This isn't legal. She can't just. She never signed it away. Michael interrupted, his voice breaking. She was always the owner. Vanessa slammed the folder shut. Then fix it. Call a lawyer. Undo it. Michael sat heavily in the chair, the note still in his hand. You asked me not to tell the neighbors? I was your mother. So I didn't. You asked me not to talk about the house. So I didn't. You didn't ask me to sign it away. So I didn't. His throat tightened. What are you waiting for? Vanessa snapped. He looked up at her, something raw in his expression. You were planning to take it anyway, weren't you? What are you talking about? He opened the lower drawer, pulled out the folder labeled Vanessa Stone Trust, and dropped it on the desk. The papers spilled slightly, the legal drafts damning in their precision. Vanessa's face froze, then hardened. You went through my files? You were going to cut me out. His voice cracked, louder now. Erase me, just like you erased her. Sophie whimpered softly. The house felt smaller, walls pressing in. For the first time in years, Michael saw both betrayals laid bare, the mother he had hidden, and the wife who had hidden him. He lowered his head into his hands, trembling. Memory pierced him. A boy on a windy beach shouting proudly, "That's my mom." And the silence now felt like punishment. I did not return to the house in Fresno. Not because I feared confrontation, but because my work there was done. The deed bore my name alone, and that was enough. I flew back to Spokane on a quiet Monday morning, the clouds below the plane looking soft enough to carry secrets. The next week, I sat in my lawyer's office, hands steady as I signed a new trust. The property was reassigned, not to me, not to Michael, but to Sophie, my granddaughter. The trust carried a stipulation Vanessa could never touch it. Sophie would inherit everything on her 25th birthday, or earlier if the court deemed her ready. I left the office lighter, as though decades of silence had finally lifted off my shoulders. Days passed. On Thursday evening, the phone rang. Michael's voice was small, almost boyish. Mom, I got the documents. It's real, isn't it? Yes, I said simply. You could have talked to me first. I tried, I replied softly. For years. Silence lingered. Then he whispered, Thank you for not embarrassing me. Oh, Michael, I sighed. I didn't do this to shame you. I did it to remind you of who built the floor you're standing on. His voice cracked. She's furious. She keeps saying you ruined everything. No, I said gently. I preserved something for Sophie. One day, she will know the truth. Weeks later, a package arrived. Inside was the framed photo of us at the beach, the same one I had left on his console. Michael had mailed it back, but not with bitterness, with reverence. I placed it on my shelf, beside a photo of my late husband and a clay handprint Sophie had made in preschool. Then came a call I never expected. Sophie's small voice chirped over the line. Grandma, Daddy says you gave me a house. I laughed softly. Not yet, sweetheart. But one day, it will be yours. Can I paint my room pink? She asked eagerly. You can paint it any color you want. Her giggle rang like wind chimes. Will you live there with me? No, darling, I whispered, but it'll always be nearby. Promise? Promise. The days grew quieter after that. Not empty, quiet. Like a room after a conversation when everything important has been said. I tended my small garden, baked again, and answered Sophie's crooked-lettered notes. One drawing showed the house in pink crayon with 2 stick figures outside. She had written, This is my house. Grandma's house, too. And that was the lesson. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Love is not surrender, it remembers. The quietest person in the room can own the floorboards under everyone's feet. And one day, When Sophie walks through those doors, she will know. Not just about the house, but about the woman who made sure it still stood. Looking back, I realize this was never about marble countertops or polished floors. It was about respect. The kind of respect a parent deserves after years of sacrifice. My silence had been mistaken for weakness, but in truth, it was patience. I waited until the moment was right. And then I reminded my son that love does not mean disappearing, and sacrifice does not mean surrender. By placing the house in Sophie's trust, I chose to give the next generation both stability and truth. One day, when she grows old enough to understand, she will know who built the foundation under her feet. And perhaps Michael will remember too that dignity is not granted. It is claimed. So tell me, what lesson do you take from my story? And where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. I would love to know.